Hi, my name is Ethan Calder, and I can tell you the exact second my marriage died. It wasn't during a fight or in a lawyer's office. It was in a hotel hallway in Miami, outside room 847, with a dozen red roses slipping out of my hand. On the other side of that door, my wife was moaning a man's name that wasn't mine. Her boss. The guy I'd shaken hands with at Christmas parties. I remember the carpet pattern, the hum of the ice machine, the way my heart went so loud I couldn't hear my own thoughts, only her voice begging him not to stop. People talk about heartbreak like it's poetic. It isn't. It's stupid and raw and makes your legs want to give out. So let me ask you something. Before we go back to the beginning, if you were me, standing there in that hallway, what would you have done? If you've ever had a moment so sharp it split your life in two, you'll understand why I need to go back to the beginning. Back to the man I was before Miami, before room 847, before everything I believed about love came apart in my hands like wet paper. My name is Ethan Calder, 35, history teacher at Ridgemont High in Atlanta, the kind of man who packs his lunch, grades essays during basketball games, and trusts people a little too easily, especially my wife, Marissa. For 6 years, I thought we had something steady, not flashy, not dramatic, just solid. We lived in a modest craftsman-style house in Decatur, big magnolia tree out front, creaky porch boards that I always swore I'd fix. Saturday mornings were farmers markets, coffee from that tiny place on Ponce, and her teasing me for overanalyzing everything. I taught teenagers why reconstruction still mattered. She built her career at Vanguard Therapeutics, climbing faster than either of us expected. I loved her ambition, that edge she had when she talked about winning clients, pitching campaigns, proving herself. I thought it balanced me, her fire, my calm. That's what marriage is, right? Two people carrying different pieces of the same load. Looking back, I realize how carefully I'd edited the picture in my head. How many small things I'd brushed aside because love makes you choose blindness over discomfort. The late nights at the office, the business trips that grew from 2 days to 4, the designer clothes she bought because the job demands it. The way she checked her phone like oxygen lived inside it. I wasn't suspicious. I was proud. Proud she was becoming the woman she always said she could be. The shift started on a Wednesday evening, the kind that felt like it wanted to rain but never committed. I'd planned to spend the weekend grading essays on the civil rights movement, my comfort zone. But my mom called, her voice brighter than usual, telling me Aunt Miriam had sent a belated birthday check. $3,000. Apparently, she'd been saving for me for nearly a decade because she never got around to mailing anything on time. I laughed when I hung up. $3,000 isn't life-changing, but it's enough to nudge a man into foolish hope. Enough to spark the thought. Maybe I can do something special for Marissa. Something she'll never expect. She had been so tense lately. Shoulders tight, eyes glued to spreadsheets late into the night. She kept saying this Miami conference could change everything. Promotion, salary bump, new opportunities, bigger dreams. So I opened my laptop and started searching flights. Atlanta to Miami, Thursday afternoon. 1 seat left. 387 round trip. The idea warmed me. Simple, romantic, almost old-fashioned. Show up, surprise her. Remind her that even in the middle of her whirlwind career, she still had someone who adored her. I booked the flight, paid for roses to be delivered to the hotel, made a reservation at a beachfront restaurant she'd mentioned months ago. Packed my nicest shirt, and the cologne she always said made me smell like a man who has his life together. I even lied to my principal, told him I had a family emergency. That stung more than I expected, I don't lie. But for her, for us, I thought one small bend wouldn't break anything. On the flight down, I graded essays out of habit, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Memories of our first date, mini golf and cheap tacos, the night I proposed in a vineyard in North Georgia with fireflies blinking around us like tiny blessings, her promise, spoken with tears in her eyes, I choose you, every day. I clung to that memory the way a man clings to a rope in rising water. When the plane landed, I stepped into the Miami air, humid, heavy, smelling faintly of salt and sunscreen, and felt something like excitement twist in my chest. I didn't know it then, but I was walking straight into the moment that would end the man I used to be. At that point, I still believed I was doing something romantic, something good, something that would bring us closer. It never occurred to me, not even for a second, that I was already too late. Miami always looks like a postcard. Turquoise sky, palm trees swaying like they're posing, hotel towers glittering with money I've never touched. But that afternoon, stepping out of the Uber in front of the Solera Grand Resort, I felt like a man walking into someone else's life. The place was absurdly beautiful. Glass walls catching the sunset, marble fountains, valet attendants in crisp white uniforms jogging toward Porsches and Bentleys. I stood there in my teacher khakis holding a carry-on bag that suddenly felt embarrassingly dull. I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't here to impress Miami. I was here to surprise my wife. Inside, the lobby was all cool marble and air-conditioned luxury. Chandelier shaped like frozen rain. Art I couldn't pretend to understand. People in suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. And there I was, Ethan Calder, the history teacher who packed peanut butter sandwiches and used coupons at Kroger, trying to blend in. I rehearsed my lines as I approached the front desk. "Hi, I'm surprising my wife. She's here for a conference, room 847. It sounded sweet in my head. On the verge of adorable. Maria, the front desk attendant with a neat braid and warm smile, typed in Marissa's name. And then something in her expression shifted. Not much, just a tiny flicker. But it was enough to make every nerve in my body tense. "Your wife checked in Tuesday," she said softly. "But I can't issue a key for her room due to policy." I showed her my driver's license, our home address, our wedding photo on my phone. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just wanted to get upstairs and see Marissa's face light up. Maria hesitated, then leaned in. "Mr. Calder, there's a second guest on the reservation." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" She lowered her voice. "A Rowan Pierce checked in with her yesterday afternoon." The words hit like a hammer to the sternum, not dramatic, not cinematic, just a pressure so strong it hollowed out the space behind my ribs. Rowan, her boss, the man she always said saw her potential, the man I'd shaken hands with twice and thought stupidly was just another mentor. I swallowed, nodded, thanked Maria, though the world had started buzzing like static. My legs moved on autopilot toward the elevators. On the ride up, I stared at my reflection in the polished brass panel. I looked normal, calm even. It didn't match the tornado tearing through my chest. The hallway on the 8th floor smelled like expensive cologne and disinfectant. Carpets thick enough to swallow footsteps. I passed rooms 843, 845, then 847. The roses I'd picked up from the concierge, 24, felt heavier than anything I'd ever held. I raised my hand to knock. Then I froze. I heard her voice. Not the voice she used on client calls. Not the polite, professional tone I knew by heart. This was soft, breathy. The the voice she saved for our bedroom. The one she used when she wanted me close, except she wasn't saying my name. She was saying his. Rhythmic creaking. A low groan. Her whisper turning into a gasp I recognized down to the bone. I felt my knees go weak. My vision tightened around the numbers on the door. The roses slipped from my hand and scattered like broken promises across the carpet. People talk about heartbreak like it's one clean break. It isn't. It's shrapnel. Sharp, tiny pieces lodging themselves everywhere inside you at once. I stood there, unable to move, unable to breathe, listening to the sounds of my wife giving herself to another man. A part of me wanted to kick the door in, to scream, to drag them into the hallway and force them to face what they were doing. But then something strange happened. The historian in me, the part that teaches strategy, consequences, power dynamics, whispered, "Don't react, observe, understand. Don't give them the scene they expect." So I stepped back. I picked up the roses. I walked down the hallway with legs that didn't feel like mine. Back in the elevator, the music played some upbeat pop song I couldn't hear over the roar in my head. My hands shook so hard I had to tuck them into my pockets. In the lobby again, surrounded by laughter and the clinking of glasses, it felt like the entire world was mocking me. Normal people on normal trips, couples holding hands, businessmen bragging about deals, tourists excited for their vacation, and me standing at the center of it all, holding evidence that the life I'd built was already dead. I found my voice long enough to ask Maria for a room. Any room. Far from the 8th floor. She nodded without question, like she'd seen this kind of devastation before. When I finally closed the door to my own room on the 6th floor, I sank onto the bed and stared at the wall. No tears, no outburst. Just a numb, vibrating silence. Because somewhere between the hallway and this room, a new thought had anchored itself inside me. This isn't just betrayal. This is leverage. And if they're willing to lie, then I need the truth more than ever. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment I stopped being the man who flew to Miami for love, and became the man who was going to burn their lies to the ground. Back in my room on the 6th floor, the silence felt unnatural, thick, padded, like the kind that settles after an explosion. My ears were still ringing with the sounds from room 847, her breathless voice, his low, satisfied groan. The creaking rhythm that told me exactly how little my existence mattered to either of them in that moment. Shock didn't hit all at once. It came in waves, heat, then cold, then a strange calm, as if my body couldn't decide whether to break down or brace for impact, so I did the only thing I could control. I started documenting. I took out my phone with hands that weren't steady and began photographing everything. My boarding pass, the timestamp, the hotel's exterior, the marble lobby, the digital directory showing the 8th floor, the hallway outside her room. I even wrote down the exact time I heard her voice say his name. Not because I wanted revenge, because I needed truth. Something solid to hold on to while my world tilted. At one point, I unlocked my phone messages and reread the thread where Marissa had texted me earlier. Conference is exhausting, but good. Learning a lot. Might be another late night. Love you. I stared at the words until they blurred, wondering how easily she'd typed them. Was she already in his room then? Or had she waited until after? The details shouldn't matter, but when your heart cracks, every detail feels like part of the autopsy. I wanted to call her, demand answers, scream until my throat tore. Instead, I typed back something neutral, something loving, something she'd expect. Miss you too. Can't wait to hear about everything when you get home. It felt like injecting poison into my own veins. But keeping her guard down was the first real decision I made that night. A small, sick part of me wondered if they were still together upstairs, tangled up, her fingers in his hair the way she used to hold mine. That thought sent a physical ache through my chest, sharp, sudden, humiliating. I finally forced myself to stand, trying to steady my breathing. I walked to the window, stared out at Miami glowing under the night sky, cruelly beautiful, buzzing, indifferent. Couples wandered the boardwalk. Music floated from beach bars. Life moved on as my own life fractured quietly on the other side of hotel wallpaper. I sat back on the bed and opened the notes app. I started writing everything I remembered from the front desk conversation, Maria's facial expression shifting, the hesitation before she said Rowan Pierce's name, Rowan, her mentor, her friend, her married boss. A memory blindsided me. Marissa, months ago, laughing off a comment I made about how often Rowan called her. He believes in me, she'd said. He thinks I'm capable of more. At the time, I'd been proud of her. Now the memory stung like betrayal disguised as encouragement. By 1 a.m., I was exhausted but wired. I ordered room service, a burger I could barely swallow, and forced myself to scroll through articles about Georgia divorce laws, financial protections, and what to do when your spouse cheats. Practical things, detached things, things that made me feel like I was standing outside my own life studying it, because the one thing I couldn't do was think about Marissa's face, her hands, her body under his, the way she used to whisper my name with that same breathless urgency. Every time my mind drifted there, it felt like a blade pressed to my ribs. I don't know when I fell asleep, but I woke before dawn, sitting upright, heart hammering like I'd been running. Jet lag, adrenaline, and heartbreak make a twisted cocktail. By the time I boarded my return flight to Atlanta that morning, I'd made a choice. I wasn't going to confront Marissa in Miami. Not yet. Not without understanding the full scale of what she'd done and why. I landed just after noon. When I walked into our home, our calm, predictable, lived-in home, it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt staged, like a museum exhibit of a marriage that had never really existed. Every photograph on the wall felt like a lie. Every mug, every blanket, every inside joke printed on a fridge magnet felt poisoned. I walked from room to room, numb, like I was crossing a battlefield after the war was already lost. Then I entered her home office, neat, color-coded, organized with military precision. This was her sanctuary, her control center. I wasn't expecting to find anything. Not really. But when I opened the second drawer to look at old financial documents, a small cream-colored envelope slid forward. Inside was a handwritten note. Simple, elegant paper, a soft floral scent I recognized from her bedside table. I unfolded it with a sense of dread so heavy it felt like my lungs filled with cement. V. Last night was unforgettable. I can't stop thinking about you. I know we have to be careful, but God, I wish I could wake up next to you every morning. Same time next month? We should try that place you mentioned. RV for Marissa's middle name, Valerie. R for Rowan, dated 4 months ago. 4 months, not Miami, not a one-time mistake. An ongoing affair, planned, repeated, nurtured. I felt the world tilt sideways. My hand shook so violently the paper nearly slipped from my grip. This wasn't a stumble. This wasn't temptation. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was deliberate, sustained, intimate in ways that ripped through me deeper than the Miami sounds ever could. I forced myself to photograph the note from 3 angles, capturing the handwriting, the date, every damning detail. Then I placed it back exactly as I'd found it. Evidence, truth. Pieces of a puzzle I hadn't asked to solve. By the time I finished combing through the rest of her files, credit card statements, travel schedules, unfamiliar restaurant charges, I understood something that made my hands go cold. Marissa hadn't just cheated. She'd been preparing to leave me, to blindside me with a divorce, to move money around before I could notice. That was the moment my grief changed shape. I stopped feeling like a man whose heart had broken. I started feeling like a man who'd been hunted. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the shock, beneath the humiliation, a steadier voice rose. Then, protect yourself. Learn everything. Don't let them write the ending of your life without your consent. That night, with the house dark around me and my phone glowing in my hand, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Marcus Vega, my old college roommate turned private investigator. When he answered, warm, familiar, steady, I finally felt a piece of solid ground under me for the first time since Miami. And I said the words that would start everything. Marcus, I need help. And I need you to tell me the truth, no matter how ugly it is. Marcus showed up at my house the next evening with a leather binder, a tired smile, and the kind of look you give someone who's standing on the edge of a cliff. We hadn't seen each other in almost a year, but he walked in like we were still 22, still cramming for finals, still the same 2 guys who thought the world made sense if you tried hard enough. "E," he said quietly, "before I show you anything, you need to breathe." I didn't breathe. I sat. He opened the binder. The first page was Rowan Pierce's corporate profile, awards, earnings, glowing quotes about leadership excellence. I'd seen it before, featured on the Vanguard website, but Marcus flipped the page without hesitation, and that's when my stomach tightened, because the next section wasn't public. 3 HR complaints in 7 years, Marcus said, all closed, all sealed, all involving women who worked under him. 2 resigned. 1 transferred out of state. I stared at the names, Sloan Mercer, Arden Wells, and another victim whose letter was so heavily redacted it might as well have been blank. Marissa wasn't the first. Not even close. Marcus continued. Every time, the company settled quietly. NDAs, generous transition packages, standard corporate cleanup. He tapped a page with a red marker. This guy doesn't just cheat. He scouts talent, grooms them, and leverages his position. It's a pattern. A cold rush swept through me. Marissa wasn't special to Rowan. She was just next. Marcus hesitated before flipping to the final section. There's more, and you're not going to like it. My jaw clenched. Show me. He revealed copies of travel logs, expense reports, and messages pulled from a cloud backup I didn't even know Marissa had. Dates lined up with her work trips, hotel stays that didn't match what she'd told me, dinners billed to Vanguard that listed 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, always at the kind of restaurants where reservations require connections. And then, screenshots, texts between Rowan and Marissa. Not sexual this time. Strategic. If you file too soon, he gets half. Move the funds first. Don't let him get suspicious. I'll help you structure things. Play the long game, V. Each message was a blade carving away whatever innocence I still clung to. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, feeling something inside me get replaced with steel. She was planning to divorce me, blindside me, after bleeding me dry. Marcus nodded gently. Yeah, and she wasn't working alone. I didn't cry. Not this time. The grief had burned off. What remained was something colder. Clarity. When Marcus left, I sat alone in the dim light of my living room, surrounded by evidence that my wife had rehearsed my destruction, and that her boss, her lover, had coached her through every step. I kept hearing Rowan's voice the one time we met at Vanguard's holiday party. A firm handshake, warm smile. Your wife is exceptional, Ethan. You should be proud. Proud. The words scraped like sandpaper now. The next day at school, I walked through the halls like a ghost, trying to pretend he was still alive. Teenagers joked, lockers slammed. Someone dropped a backpack with a sound like a gunshot that made my heart jolt. During lunch, Derek Whitley found me sitting alone in the classroom, staring at nothing. You look like hell, he said, pulling up a chair. I tried to wave him off, but Derek wasn't the type to leave a wounded animal on the road. He studied my face, his expression turning serious. You're not sleeping. You're not eating. What's happening, man? I opened my mouth, ready to lie, ready to deflect, but the words refused to come. Instead, something tight inside me cracked, and suddenly I was confessing the unthinkable. Not everything, not the texts or the financial betrayal, but enough. My wife, she's not who I thought she was. That was all I said. That was all I could say. Derek didn't ask for details. He didn't pity me. He just put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Whatever this is, don't carry it alone. You hear me? You're not built for quiet suffering." I wanted to laugh because that's exactly what I was built for. Or at least, it's who I'd been. That evening, Helena Grayson, Marcus's recommended attorney, invited me to her office. Floor-to-ceiling windows, stacks of case folders, the faint smell of peppermint tea. She listened as I explained everything: the affair, the Miami hallway, the note in Marissa's office, the texts Marcus uncovered. When I finished, she steepled her fingers. Ethan, you have 3 choices. 1, file cleanly and walk away with minimal conflict. 2, expose Marissa and Rowan privately, using this evidence to negotiate favorable terms. Or 3, pursue strategic justice. Not revenge, justice. Her voice lowered. And to be clear, justice would be messy, public, and thorough. I thought of Marissa's handwriting on that cream paper, her voice in the hotel room, her laughter at dinner she told me never happened, her belief, her absolute confidence that I'd never figure any of it out. I want the truth exposed, I said. Not just for me, for every woman he's done this to, for every lie they told thinking I couldn't see through it. Helena nodded, turning a page in her legal pad. Then you're choosing war. I didn't flinch. I'm choosing honesty. As I left her office, the air outside felt sharper, colder, almost electric. The sky was a deep indigo, and the city hummed with the noise of people living lives untouched by betrayal. But inside me, a shift had taken place. I was no longer a man trying to save a marriage. That man died in Miami. I was someone new. Someone who understood that love without truth is just a beautifully packaged lie. Someone who understood the difference between pain and purpose. And for the first time since room 847, I felt the faintest, smallest spark of something like direction. Not hope. Not yet. But direction. The war hadn't started, but I could hear it gathering in the distance. And this time, I wasn't walking into it blind. Playing the loving husband should have felt impossible. But the terrifying truth was how easily I slipped into it. Muscle memory, I guess. 6 years of routine doesn't evaporate overnight, even when your heart has been carved open. So I smiled when Marissa came home. I cooked dinner. I kissed her cheek. I asked about her day. She didn't know she was talking to a ghost. If she noticed anything off, she hid it well. Maybe she didn't want to look too closely. Maybe she couldn't imagine a world where I wasn't gullible, reliable, predictable Ethan. The man who'd never question her. The man she thought would crumble instead of fight. That week blurred into a careful choreography of pretending. During the day, I taught my classes, Reconstruction, the 14th Amendment, how systems protect the powerful. At night, I became a different kind of historian, studying the collapse of my own marriage. I combed through our bank accounts and saw patterns I'd never noticed before. Transfers between credit cards, withdrawals spaced just enough to avoid suspicion. Expenses she'd labeled work-related, except Marcus later confirmed Rowan had approved them personally. The deeper I looked, the clearer the strategy became. She was positioning herself, preparing, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and every discovery was another punch to the gut. But the worst blow came Thursday night. Marcus called. I could hear wind on his end. He was probably sitting in his car, engine running, debating how to tell me. He said, I found more. My pulse kicked up. What now? Screenshots, conversation threads between her and Pierce. Not sexual. Worse. My throat tightened. Send them. When the messages came through, I stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at the screen as my ears started to ring again. If you divorce him too early, he'll get leverage. He's smart enough to notice if you shift assets too quickly. Wait until after the promotion. Then you control the narrative. Trust me. Play compliant. He'll never see it coming. The next message was from Marissa. You're right. He's too analytical. He'd figure it out. Better to wait until my numbers are high enough. Then I can negotiate terms that favor me. That sentence broke something inside me in a way the Miami hallway hadn't, because that line wasn't about lust. It wasn't about sex. It wasn't even about Rowan. It was about me, my intelligence, my work ethic, my loyalty, my value, reduced to a liability in her strategy. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd assessed me, like an obstacle to remove. I replayed the words, each one slicing deeper, until the only thing I felt was humiliation so intense it almost made me dizzy. That night, Marissa walked into the kitchen wearing leggings and one of Rowan's conference polos she'd accidentally brought home months ago. She poured a glass of wine, sighed dramatically, and leaned her head on my shoulder as if nothing in her world had changed. You okay? She asked, casual, gentle. You've been quiet lately. Quiet. If she only knew the noise inside my skull. I forced a smile. Just tired, long week. She slid her arms around my waist, warming my back. I stood there, letting her hold me, while my mind replayed her text. Better to wait until my numbers are high enough. Her body against mine felt foreign now, like wearing someone else's clothes. After she went to bed, I finally let myself sink onto the couch. A heaviness pressed on my chest, the kind that made breathing feel like a chore. I stared at the ceiling until the room blurred. I wasn't just broken. I was ashamed. Ashamed I hadn't seen it sooner. Ashamed I'd defended her late nights. Ashamed I'd believed her when she said she was exhausted from carrying the team. Ashamed I'd thought I was enough for her. People think anger arrives early in betrayal. It doesn't. What arrives is humiliation, the kind that makes you question every memory, every kiss, every laugh. The kind that whispers, maybe you were never loved at all. But humiliation has a strange side effect. After it swallows you whole, it leaves behind something sharper. Resolve. The next evening, after Marissa left for another strategy dinner, I played one of her voicemails on speaker while I sat at the dining table with Marcus's binder open in front of me. Her voice chirped through the room. "Hey, love, I'll be home late. Don't wait up." I stared at the evidence laid out across the table: hotel receipts, card statements, texts that cut deeper than knives, and whispered, "I'm done waiting." That was the exact moment the numbness inside me hardened into purpose. This wasn't about a broken heart anymore. This was about survival, about truth, about reclaiming the dignity she bet I would never fight for. Because Marissa had miscalculated one thing. When you underestimate a man who's lost everything, you leave him with nothing left to fear. And fear was the last thing I felt. The next morning, I emailed Helena. "I'm ready to move forward. Full plan. No hesitation." By the time the sun rose over Atlanta, the decision was no longer just made. It was locked in. I wasn't going to confront Marissa. I was going to dismantle the lies she built her future on and expose the man who taught her how. When I woke the next morning, something inside me had shifted, quietly, decisively, like a door clicking shut. There was no tremor in my hands anymore, no ringing in my ears, no nausea twisting in my gut, just purpose, pure, steady purpose. Marissa left early for work, heels clicking across the hardwood like nothing in her world was about to collapse. She kissed me on the cheek, her habitual goodbye, practiced, automatic, and I let her. I even smiled. But the moment her BMW disappeared down the street, I exhaled the breath I'd held and stepped fully into the role she never imagined I could play. The man who'd stopped being afraid. I spent the morning finalizing everything Helena needed from me. Timelines, statements, screenshots, the evidence catalog Marcus had compiled. The more I reviewed the documents, the more surgical my resolve became. Every detail sharpened my focus. Every lie made the next step feel justified. At 1:15 p.m., I got a message from Marcus. "Patricia wants to talk. Today." My heart dipped, not from fear, but from the weight of what speaking to her meant. She was the other casualty in this war Rowan had been waging for years. Another person who'd believed in a life that wasn't real. I agreed to meet her. We chose a small cafe in Inman Park, neutral ground, quiet, tucked between tree-lined streets and old brick storefronts. When I walked in, I spotted her instantly, a woman in her late 30s, sharp-featured, dressed simply, hands wrapped tightly around a coffee mug she hadn't touched. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the last 2 weeks. "Patricia?" I asked gently. She looked up, her eyes red but steady. "You must be Ethan." I sat across from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. The silence between us was crowded with the ghosts of 2 marriages that had died the same ugly death. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, but edged with something steel-hard underneath. "I read everything you sent me. I read it 3 times. I kept hoping I was misinterpreting it." Her throat tightened. I wasn't. "No," I said quietly. "You weren't." She swallowed and met my eyes. "How did you survive hearing them?" No one had asked me that yet. Not like that. Honestly. Personally. I took a slow breath. "I didn't," I admitted. "Not the version of me that existed before that night. He died in that hallway." Her eyes glistened, and she nodded, too vigorously, like she didn't trust herself to speak if she stopped moving. "I thought I knew my husband. I thought I built a life with a good man," she whispered. "But now I read those messages, those promises he made to your wife, and I realize he didn't even respect me enough to lie well." Her voice broke on the last word. But she pushed through. And I'm tired of protecting him. Tired of pretending. That was the moment I saw it. The same spark I'd felt ignite in myself. Not rage, not revenge, accountability. I'm going forward with the divorce, she said firmly. Full custody, full disclosure, and I want to coordinate with you, with your investigator, with your attorney. I don't want Rowan hurting anyone else the way he hurt us. She paused, exhaled shakily. Can you help me, Ethan? Absolutely, I said. You're not alone in this. Her shoulders slumped in relief, as if those words alone lightened her burden. We spent the next hour comparing timelines, sharing details, filling gaps in the pattern of Rowan's manipulation. And with every confirmation, every overlap, the story became clearer. Rowan Pierce didn't just have affairs. He cultivated them. Targeted women he supervised, rewarded silence, punished resistance, and protected himself behind corporate walls built from money and influence. He wasn't a cheating husband. He was a predator. When I walked Patricia to her car, she stopped, wiped her eyes, and said quietly, "Thank you. People always talk about how betrayal shatters you, but they never talk about how humiliating it is, how stupid it makes you feel." I nodded. I know. And they certainly never talk about how empowering it is when you stop being the victim. I gave her a small, grim smile. They will. After this. She closed her car door and drove away, leaving me standing in the afternoon sunlight with a certainty I hadn't felt since the night outside that hotel room. This wasn't just about Marissa anymore. This was about dismantling the system that allowed men like Rowan to operate unchecked, and the corporations that cashed in on their results. That evening, while Marissa was working late again, Helena and I spoke for over an hour. She laid out a coordinated strategy, precise, aggressive, airtight. If this were war, Helena Morrison was the general who never lost. "We strike Monday," she said. EEOC, the board, the journalists, all synchronized. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "And Ethan," she added, her tone softening, "you need to prepare yourself. Once this begins, there is no version of this story where your life looks the same afterward." "It already doesn't," I said. She exhaled, almost a sigh of respect. "You're stronger than you think." Maybe. Or maybe I just run out of things to lose. After the call, I stood alone in my kitchen, hands braced on the countertop, head bowed as the weight of everything settled around me. 2 weeks ago, I'd been a husband planning a surprise dinner. Now I was the architect of a scandal that would topple careers. Funny how fast life breaks. But in that moment, something, finally, felt right. Not painless, not easy, but right. Because for the first time since Miami, since those sounds behind door 814 carved me open from the inside, I wasn't drowning. I was fighting. And this time, I wasn't fighting for my marriage. I was fighting for myself, for the truth, for every person Rowan had crushed along the way. Monday was coming, and when the first domino fell, it wouldn't stop with Marissa. The entire structure that had protected Rowan Pierce for years was going to collapse, and I was done pretending I wasn't the one who pushed it. Monday didn't arrive quietly. It hit like a siren. I woke before the alarm, heart steady, mind clear in a way that felt unnatural. The kind of clarity that comes right before a controlled demolition, when every charge has been planted and all that's left is the countdown. Downstairs, the house was silent. Early light crept across the kitchen tile as I poured coffee and reviewed the timeline, again, though at this point I knew every minute by heart. At 9:01 a.m., Jennifer Brooks would file her EEOC complaint. At 9:15, Helena's evidence packet would hit the inboxes of Pierce and Harlow's board. At 9:30, Marcus's curated dossier, an ironclad chronology of Rowan's abuse, would land with 3 journalists. At 10:00, the process server would hand Marissa her divorce papers at the office in front of everyone she respected. And by noon, the first article would go live. The fall would begin. Upstairs, I heard footsteps. Marissa getting ready. I waited, sipping my coffee slowly, almost peacefully. When she finally came down, she wore her big day outfit, navy suit, hair pinned back, the faintest trace of a smile. "I might be late tonight," she said, reaching for her keys. "Rowan wants to regroup about some HR thing. Apparently, someone filed a complaint." I nodded lightly, swirling the coffee in my cup. "Seems like a messy situation." "She's being dramatic," Marissa said. "Jennifer never handled pressure well." "Pressure," I thought. Interesting word choice. She leaned in to kiss me. I let her. It was the last time she would do it as my wife, even if she didn't know it yet. When her car pulled away and disappeared down the street, I exhaled and opened my phone. Right on time. A message from Helena. "It's begun." At 9:24 a.m., my phone lit up again, this time with a name that made my pulse jump. Patricia Pierce. I stepped into the empty hallway outside my classroom before answering. "Ethan," she said, her voice tight with emotion, "I need to know this is real. I need you to tell me you're absolutely certain." There were noises behind her, papers rustling, a door closing. She sounded like someone whose world was collapsing in real time. "I'm certain," I said softly. "I wish I wasn't." A shaky breath. "How long?" "At least 8 months," I said. "Probably longer. And I have evidence of everything." Silence. Then a broken whisper. 15 years of marriage, and he was promising your wife a future he never gave me." Her voice cracked on the last word. It hit deeper than I expected. "Patricia," I said, steadying my tone, "you're not alone in this. We can coordinate. We can make sure he faces real consequences. You and I can support each other through the fallout." Another breath. This one wasn't shaky. It was controlled, centered, like she was pulling herself together in real time. "Yes," she said finally. "Let's do that. They're going to pay for this. Both of them." Her resolve felt like steel sliding into place. She hung up, and I stood alone in the hallway, the weight of what we'd started settling across my shoulders. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was justice. By 10:12 a.m., updates poured in like rapid fire. A text from Helena. "Marissa served in front of her department. It was loud. A photo followed, a time-stamped confirmation. Something in me tightened, but I didn't flinch. A voicemail from Marcus. Rowan pulled into an HR meeting. He's not coming back out anytime soon." A message from Patricia. "Filed. My lawyer is going for full custody. He's denying everything." Then at 11:00 a.m., the moment everything truly cracked open, the Atlanta Ledger posted the first article. "Executive under investigation for serial misconduct." Rowan's name was in the headline. His photo sat right beneath it. The article described a persistent pattern of inappropriate relationships with subordinates, the company's multiple internal complaints, and the legal exposure Pierce and Harlow now faced. Jennifer was quoted. Christine, too. Even a third former employee Marcus had located. And then there was my quote, the one I'd agreed to allow Krista to use. "My marriage was destroyed by coercion and abuse of power, but what I found wasn't just my own betrayal. It was a system built to protect predators. I won't stay silent. Seeing it in print hit me different than I expected. Not satisfaction, not triumph. A quiet, heavy disbelief. This was real. I had lit the match, and now the fire was spreading. By lunchtime, the office group chats across Atlanta were buzzing. HR departments everywhere were apparently forwarding the article with phrases like important read and mandatory review. Pearson Harlow released a statement announcing Rowan's suspension. A second journalist emailed me. Can you comment further on patterns within the company culture? I forwarded it to Helena. She responded within minutes. Do not comment further. We control the pace from here. I felt the gears shifting, legal, financial, reputational. This wasn't a scandal anymore. It was a collapse. Through it all, my phone kept vibrating with calls from Marissa. At first, angry, then pleading, then hysterical. I didn't answer. I saved every voicemail, every tearful apology, every promise, every lie, evidence. When school ended, I sat in my car in the parking lot, letting the quiet settle around me. For the first time since Miami, the air didn't feel heavy on my chest. The war had begun, but I wasn't bleeding anymore. I was standing, breathing, ready. When I turned the key in the ignition, my phone lit up again. Another message from Marcus. Round one goes to you, but they're scrambling. The real hit is coming tomorrow. I leaned back in my seat, closed my eyes for a moment, and let the words sink in. Round one. The idea almost made me smile, because this was just the beginning. By Tuesday morning, the storm had a rhythm. Every few hours, another email, another headline, another whisper slipping through corporate hallways and landing in my inbox through someone who shouldn't have been talking, but couldn't help themselves. It was the kind of chaos that didn't explode all at once. It tightened, incrementally, relentlessly, like a noose. I woke before sunrise again, not because of anxiety anymore, but out of a strange alertness, like my body knew the next blow was coming and refused to let me miss it. Downstairs, I brewed coffee and watched the sky turn from gray to orange through the kitchen window. The house had never been so quiet. Even the refrigerator hum seemed cautious. At 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Helena. The Chronicle is dropping the long-form expose at noon. Brace yourself, I typed back. Ready? I wasn't sure that was true, but readiness didn't matter anymore. Momentum had its own logic now. At 7:30, Marissa came down the stairs. She looked wrecked. Her eyes were swollen. Her hair, usually smoothed to precision, was tied in a messy knot like she'd slept in her office clothes. When she reached the bottom step, she paused, as if she wasn't sure she still lived here. Ethan, she said quietly, can we talk? I didn't answer. I just sipped my coffee. She swallowed. I didn't sleep last night. They've taken Rowan's access badge. HR confiscated his laptop. People are talking in the hallways like... Her voice thinned. Like I'm part of this scandal. I raised a brow. Part of it? Her bottom lip trembled. She shut her eyes. Okay, fine, at the center of it. Is that what you want me to say? No, I said. I didn't script any of this. Your actions did that. She flinched as if I'd struck her. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she whispered. Just understanding. I didn't know it would go this far. People never do, I said. But consequences don't ask your permission. She drew a shaky breath, pressing the heel of her hand to her temple. HR wants to meet with me again at 9, she said. They're evaluating whether I violated company policy. You did, I said calmly. Her eyes snapped open. You don't know that. I gave a slow, almost pitying exhale. Marissa, You had an 8-month affair with your direct supervisor. You traveled with him on the company's dime. You stayed in shared rooms. You were promoted by him. And you sent him messages planning to hide assets before blindsiding me with a divorce. I paused. I know because I read them. Her face collapsed, not in anger, in shame. It was the first honest emotion I'd seen from her since Miami. Please, she whispered, don't hate me. I don't, I said, not anymore, but we're done, and you know why. She nodded, small, jerky, defeated. Then she left for work, shoulders tight, clutching her keys, like a lifeline she wasn't sure would hold. I watched through the window as she backed out of the driveway. For the first time, she didn't look confident behind the wheel. She looked like someone bracing for impact. By mid-morning, the fallout spread. Marcus sent a message. Pierce and Harlow board is panicking. Investors demanding an emergency response. Patricia sent another. Rowan refused to sign temporary separation terms. My lawyer is filing for emergency custody. He's unraveling. And then Helena, precise as always. Brace for the feature article. It is comprehensive. She wasn't exaggerating. At 12:03 p.m., the Atlanta Business Chronicle posted its full investigative piece. 46 paragraphs. 3 named victims. 5 anonymous ones. Corporate emails. Internal memos. Patterns of coercion. Misused company funds. Promotions tied to silence. Settlements buried through NDAs. Rowan's face was plastered at the top like a mug shot. And then there was the quote attributed to me. When someone abuses power, the damage doesn't just happen behind closed doors. It ripples outward, destroying marriages, careers, and people who trusted them. Someone had to say enough. My stomach tightened reading it. Not because I regretted it, but because seeing it in print made the entire situation more real than any evidence file ever could. This wasn't a private war anymore. It was public. National outlets picked it up within the hour. Industry blogs, legal forums, HR analysts, all of them dissecting Rowan like a specimen pinned to a board. And Marissa, by association, was being flayed alongside him. At 1:17 p.m., she called me. I let it ring. Then came a text. Please, I need you. Then another. They've taken me off all client accounts. They think I knew everything Rowan was doing. And then, after a long pause, I'm scared. I put the phone face down on my desk, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Her fear wasn't my responsibility anymore. That afternoon, while my students worked on a group project, Helena called. They're firing Rowan, she said without preamble. I closed my eyes. Good. He's threatening to sue, threatening to drag Marissa down with him, threatening to smear the victims. But the board won't back him. They know they can't. Then it's done, I said quietly. Round 1 and 2, she corrected. Divorce settlement is next. Then final media coverage. Then closure. Closure. A strange word. Did I feel it? Not quite. But I felt something close. A loosening. A quiet. Like my lungs finally had room again. That evening, I drove home with the windows cracked, letting the cool air wash over me. Traffic hummed softly around the Edgemont exit. The skyline glowed against a fading sunset. For a moment, despite everything, I felt calm, not healed, not whole, but steady. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark, silent. Marissa hadn't come home. I stood in the entryway, listening to the stillness settle around me, soft, expansive, no longer suffocating. Tomorrow, more dominoes would fall, but tonight, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel broken, or betrayed, or lost. I felt free. And maybe that was its own kind of victory. And the strangest part of watching a life fall apart, your own, someone else's, or the version of it you thought was real, is how quietly the pieces eventually stop moving. After weeks of shock, fury, strategy, and consequences hitting like ricocheting bullets, things don't end with an explosion. They end with stillness. It was 2 days before Christmas when that stillness finally reached me. The morning air was cold enough that I could see my breath as I carried a box of Marissa's books down the stairs. The house echoed. Half the shelves were empty, the walls bare where our pictures had once hung. It didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt like something had been drained out of it, like a space waiting for a new story. Marissa arrived right at 10. She looked smaller than I remembered, her frame swallowed by a winter coat, her new haircut tucked behind her ears. She hesitated in the doorway like she was afraid the house might spit her back out. "Thank you for letting me come," she said softly. "I'm not stopping you," I said, stepping aside. She moved slowly, carefully, as if each object she touched might burn her. She packed her things in silence at first, pausing every so often to steady her breathing. I stood at the edge of the room, not helping, but not hovering either. There was nothing to protect here. Not anymore. After the last box was taped shut, she turned toward me with her arms folded tight across her chest. "I'm not here to fight," she said. I need to say something before I go." I didn't answer. She took that as permission. "I'm sorry," she began, but not the frantic apology I'd heard on her voicemails. This one was quieter, heavy. Not just for the affair, for everything that came after, for the lies, for the planning, for the way I convinced myself you'd be fine, like you were some stable piece of furniture that wouldn't move no matter what I did. She laughed anxiously, then wiped at her eyes. "I don't know when I became that person," she said. "Someone willing to ruin the one good thing I'd built. Someone who could look you in the eye and lie to you. Someone who could be cruel. You had choices," I said, not unkindly. "You made the ones that suited you." "I know," she whispered, "and I've been trying to understand why. My therapist keeps telling me I lost myself somewhere along the way. That ambition became survival. That attention felt like oxygen. But none of that excuses what I did to you." I said nothing. Let her speak. "And the worst part? Rowan didn't even fight for me. He denied everything. He told HR I manipulated him, that I pursued him, that I was unbalanced." She shook her head slowly, almost laughing. "He erased me in one meeting. One. After everything." I believed her. Not because she deserved belief, but because it fit the pattern of who Rowan was. "I'm sorry he betrayed you," I said. She met my eyes. Then, really met them for the first time since before Miami. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "No," I said. "I did, for a while, but now, I just don't know who you are. And I don't think you know either." She nodded, accepting it. Or maybe recognizing it. "We had good years," she said. "Real ones. I hope someday you can remember them without all of this poisoning everything." "Maybe," I said, "but not yet." A long silence stretched between us, not hostile, just final. She picked up her keys, wiping away new tears. "I hope you find someone who sees you," she whispered, "and doesn't step on that." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. She left the house slowly, carrying the last box to her car. I watched from the window as she loaded it into the trunk. She stood there for a moment, like she was trying to gather the courage to close the lid. Then she drove away. No dramatic goodbye. No cliffhanger. Just taillights fading around the corner. And with that, the last remnant of our marriage disappeared down the street. The months that followed were quieter than I expected. Not empty, just peaceful. I kept the house, painted the walls, bought furniture that felt like mine. Turned her home office into a reading room where sunlight pooled across the rug in the mornings. I went to the gym, lost weight, learned to cook something besides pasta, started hiking the Chattahoochee trails on weekends. My life didn't expand all at once, but little by little, space opened up where pain used to be. News about Rowan came in waves. First, his firing, then his divorce filing, then the custody battle Patricia waged and won, then the investigations, the lawsuits, the flood of women stepping forward now that his power was gone. The man who once carried himself like a king was reduced to a footnote in every article about corporate misconduct. Last I heard, he was living in a cramped apartment outside the city, fighting to keep visitation rights, taking consulting jobs that paid a fraction of what he used to earn. And every person he'd heard along the way finally had a voice. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just consistent. As for Marissa, she moved to the Boston office, trying to rebuild, trying to prove she was more than the scandal. According to mutual acquaintances, she kept her head down, worked hard, went to therapy, stayed single. Maybe she'll grow. Maybe she won't. But for the first time, her future wasn't entangled with mine. And that was enough. One evening in late spring, I sat on my back deck grading papers. The azaleas were blooming, pink and purple clusters that made the yard look softer than I remembered. Honeysuckle drifted in from somewhere down the block. A cardinal landed on the fence and sang its heart out like it had waited all year for this exact moment. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't know. Mr. Calder, the message read. This is Jennifer Brooks. I wanted to say thank you. Because you spoke up, I found my voice again. Because you didn't stay silent, the rest of us didn't have to either. I hope you're doing well. You deserve it. I read it twice, then typed back, thank you. And yes, we all deserved better. I set my phone aside, listened to the birds, let the warm air settle around me, breathed. For the first time since that night in Miami, the memory didn't seize my chest. It didn't hollow me out or make my hands shake. It was still there, sharp, irreversible, but it wasn't steering my life anymore. Pain changes you. Betrayal breaks something. But what you build afterward, that part is yours. I had crossed through fire and come out the other side, not untouched, not unscarred, but standing, steady, whole in a way I hadn't expected. People think the real victory in situations like mine is watching the ones who hurt you crash and burn, but that's not it. The real victory is waking up one day, realizing the hurt is behind you, and feeling something new rise in its place. Something like peace, something like purpose, something like yourself. And sitting there on that deck, the sun warm on my face, the world quiet for the first time in months, I realized something simple and true. I had survived, and more than that, I had reclaimed my life.